You are being tracked. Yes, we know our cell phones, we know our laptops, we know our smart meters, our smart refrigerators, your microwave, your TV, your neighbors. Everybody knows where you are all the time. But did you know everyone who got 1, 2, 3, 4, or more, and even those of us who are smart enough not to, are being tracked? Now, my personal opinion is all those who decided to do this, you got a card, you're being tracked, is what it is for you. I don't expect us to be tracked. Now, with that being said, anyone with half a brain understands that if they have a record signature and have issued a card to anyone who got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, only goes to common sense that if they know everybody who did them, they also know who didn't, because we're the only ones left. Why would they want to know who didn't? It's pretty simple. At some point down the road, not far down the road either, probably like at the next stoplight, they are going to come for us and give us an option. One we can't refuse, but will. At least this guy will. The option will be do or re-education camp for you, never to be seen or heard from again. All right, I found a really good video by the Epoch Times. They do excellent work. And the title is, Here's How the FBI and CDC are Tracking Purebloods. That was my word. I still don't feel good saying the other one, even though they did. I'm already on the CommieTube watch list. All right, so let's listen in a little bit.
According to a new lawsuit which came out of New York City, it turns out that the FBI has been tracking unvaccinated school teachers using their fingerprints. You heard that right. According to this new lawsuit, the fingerprints of unvaccinated public school teachers, they were tagged by the New York City government, and because of that tag, the Department of Justice, as well as the FBI under them, they flagged these people's fingerprints. And if you think that sounds wild, well, the story actually gets a lot more sobering than that. However, before we dig in through the details of this lawsuit, I should mention that unlike the New York City government, I personally do not describe madness. Just when the total lockdowns were beginning to recede, several cities in America began to heavily discriminate against unvaccinated individuals. Chief among them was New York City, who made it such that if you were not vaccinated, you were not allowed to go inside of a gym, you were not allowed to eat inside of a restaurant, you were not allowed to sit inside of a coffee shop, and most businesses had people set up at their front door in order to check people's papers before they were allowed inside. And this form of general discrimination also translated to city employees, who were given the option of either remaining unvaccinated or keeping their jobs. And while the vast majority of city employees, of course including teachers, complied with this policy, there was a sizable minority who didn't. As you can see from this footage here, that for one reason or another was ignored generally by the legacy news outlets, there were dozens of demonstrations throughout New York City protesting against these mandates. But in the end, the city of New York wound up firing close to 2,000 employees within the Department of Education, including about 1,000 teachers. But here's the kicker. These teachers did not only lose their streams of income, but instead, it looks like they also got onto the FBI's radar. Specifically, here's what attorney John Birch, who is currently representing these unvaccinated school teachers in a lawsuit against the city, here's what he said in a court hearing about a week and a half ago. Quote, when the city puts these problem codes on employees who have been terminated because of their unconstitutional policies, not only do they have this flag in their files, but their fingerprints are sent with that flag to the FBI and the New York Criminal Justice Services, so it impacts their ongoing ability to get employment at other places. Essentially, because these public school teachers refused to take the shot, the city government not only fired them, but they also flagged these teachers with what's known as a problem code, which can make it harder for them to get a job in the future. And when a teacher gets tagged like this, the problem code is automatically sent over to the FBI in the form of a flag. And so, the teachers who refuse the shot will now have a flag in their file, which will impact their ability to get employment in the future. And because all New York City Department of Education employees are fingerprinted at the beginning of their careers, their file will now contain both the flag as well as a copy of their fingerprints. Meaning that because these teachers refused to take the shot, with many of them doing so based on their religious or spiritual convictions, they're going to have a harder time finding a job in the future because, among other reasons, the FBI is tracking them using their fingerprints so that they will be found and flagged no matter where in the country they move to.
So, a female reporter found out that the Department of Education has right now an agency called the Office of Personal Investigation, and what they do is have the employees of the Department of Education, who, forgive me, call themselves investigators, but they're not. So they work for the Office of Personal Investigation. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read it without the narrator. So when this office gets an accusation from anybody, doesn't matter who, the principals send it to them, but the original complaint against somebody could be made by anybody that this employee
did something wrong.
That the employee did something wrong, then they start putting the code on the file. And of course, that is, no one is told why it's there, what they did, and in most times, and in the reporter's experience, the person did nothing wrong. So, I know 2,000 employees in New York City within just Department of Education. I know some firemen, AP, Angry Prepper, a guy we all listen to. He got fired, left, retired. Nonetheless, he didn't do the deed. Now, that's not good enough for the tyrants in Albany and New York City. They are also putting in new medical codes for the jibber jab status. Of course, experts are raising concerns about it. But anytime any of us now go to an outpatient clinic, the ER, an urgent care, regular checkup, probably dental, chiropractic, anywhere that is considered medical, we're being given a code.
The newly revised index of codes are 3 codes meant to tag those who have not received the shots. One of the codes is Z28-310, which, according to the CDC, quote, may be assigned when the patient has not received at least 1 dose of any COVID-19 vaccine.
Pure bloods.
Totally unvaccinated. Then another code, Z28-311, is for those who are partially vaccinated, meaning that they received at least 1 dose of some vaccine, but didn't receive enough doses to meet the definition of being fully vaccinated. And then there is Z2839 for, quote, other under immunization status, which is a blanket for anyone else who is not whatever the CDC at the moment deems to be fully vaccinated. All three of these new medical codes fall under a new subcategory that the CDC created within this new index called under immunization for COVID-19 status, with the goals of this new subcategory being, according to the CDC, to quote, track people who are not immunized or only partially immunized. Now, if that sounds surprising to you, let me back up for a moment and explain how we got to this point. Back in September of 2021, there was a large meeting to revise the ICD-10, which is the large index of diagnosis codes that are used by doctors here in the US. These are the codes that are written on a patient's chart and recorded into their medical histories. These codes essentially help to facilitate things like insurance claims, billing, as well as to help one doctor at one medical center know what another medical center in another part of the country found out about this particular patient. That's because these codes follow the patient wherever in the country they might go to. They're a part of their medical history. And here in the US, this index of codes, the ICD-10, is typically updated once a year. And during the meeting in 2021, CDC officials proposed adding new codes to this index in order to track the unvaccinated. Back then, during that meeting, here's what Dr. David Berglund, a CDC official, here's what he said regarding the need for these new codes. Quote, people have now been having immunizations for a number of months, and these provide protection for people who are immunized. But there has been interest expressed in being able to track people who are not immunized or who are only partially immunized. At the current time, there can be considered to be a significant modifiable risk factor for morbidity and for mortality, and it can be of interest for clinical reasons, as well as being a value for public health reasons to be able to track this. And the meeting participants were by and large down with the idea. As a response to that proposal, Kristen Ballant, who is a supervisor at Trinity Health and a member of this meeting, here's what she said, quote, I definitely think we would support this. We are currently already seeing physicians documenting unimmunized for COVID-19 in our 7 short months later, on April 1st of 2022, the 3 codes were added to the ICD-10. As you can see up on your screen, they created a new subcategory as well as 3 new codes to mark those who are either unvaccinated or quote-unquote under-vaccinated.
So, everybody's got a tracking code. Now, as a former New York State employee, anyone else who's ever worked for the state in any capacity, our fingerprints are also on file. So parents that don't want to poison their children are given a code. Whether they got it or not. If they refuse to poison their child, what is it, like 72 jabs by the time they're 5 years old or something? I had 5, all in one shot. Remember those old TB shots that look like the multicolored pen? They lined you up in kindergarten in the hall and boom, 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 boom. That was it. That's all we got. So, if a parent refuses their child at any age up until whatever age they've considered the children are old enough to give consent on their own, if the parent refuses by doing the right thing, they're given a code even if they were dumb enough to take the jab. They now have a code because they are now considered a dissident. Even though they were a sheeple and complied, they're now bucking the system because they don't want to murder their child. Kind of ironic, isn't it? Anyway, we're all being tracked. I posted a video yesterday that on the 27th, Pedo Joe or Blinken will very likely sign that WHO Treaty 2023, giving away our sovereignty and our Constitution. That will be the green light to do whatever they want. What I'm wondering is, ironically, or not so ironically, the overwhelming majority of people who did the thing were libtards. you would think that the globalists would want those lemmings around because they're willing to do whatever they're told without question. I'm not going for the numbers that they keep putting out about the percentage of versus none. Now, of course, that percentage will keep dropping because people who only got one aren't considered compliant. And now that they have the big B's in infinitum, those people won't be considered compliant. They'll actually be listed as under-immunized. But that WHO treaty is going to open the door for a staged false flag pandemic, probably a couple months after. Lock everybody down for something 10,000 miles away, just to start the systematic search and destroy of those who will be are considered a threat to the system. You know where I am. I ain't hiding. Okay, got long again. Like, share, subscribe, comment, notification bell. But for now, JT, signing off.